Hail and welcome back to Mega Man Xtreme. This has been quite a long time coming, and that's quite a bit longer than I care to admit really, but I did promise I would do a hard mode run of Mega Man Xtreme, and that is exactly what I'm doing today. So, I should probably start this by going over the different kinds of hard modes there are in Mega Man Xtreme, because it's a little bit more complex than you might imagine. The two main ways that you can experience hard mode are either when you first start up the game without any kind of save file or anything, you can just choose hard mode like straight away. You don't have to have beaten the normal mode to do that. And what that does is that starts you on a completely fresh file. You don't have any power-ups, any upgrades, like any of the body armor or any of the like Maverick weapons that you get from beating them, because you haven't done the normal mode, so you basically have nothing. It's just a raw X, his jump, his buster against the world, basically, which that is the like harder hard mode experience. But that's not what we're doing, because I'm kind of a pussy. What I'm doing is what actually kind of feels like the intended run, really, in that I am continuing on from the standard mode run. So I have the Maverick power-ups and whatnot from the standard mode run, so it kind of makes it a little bit more interesting in my mind, because it's like a bit of continuity. The story carries on from the standard mode, so it makes sense to do it like this. And also I'm just a bit scared to do in the true hard mode. I think it's kind of obvious that I have to do a lot of resets as it is for these games, so I'm making my own job easier, but I have excuses and that's what works for me. So in terms of the story, it is like a sequel story to the standard mode difficulty. I'm probably not going to be paying too much attention to it because I find the gameplay that bit more interesting, and I did also promise that I would be going over the game's reception and just like the external takes on Mega Man Xtreme, which I'll be doing that more so in the final part, more so than this part, I will say. Just because this is the part that has actual new gameplay, whereas after this, story aside, it's basically just the Sigma stages again. I'll say it has been a long time since the last update to this playthrough, which I do apologise for. I know that I've never really had a proper schedule with this kind of thing, but it's been one of them situations where I sort of put it on hiatus. I went and ran a few games in the Super Nintendo-thon over on HFC, which was a great time, by the way. We managed to raise a lot of money for the Child's Play charity, which I'm really happy about. But then, like, after I got back to my own work, I sort of was behind on FC playthroughs stuff, so I didn't really want to just dedicate my time to doing these commentaries when I have my actual work that I needed to catch up on. Like, I say work in quotations there because, you know, it's still playing games for the internet, but that's my job, this is my hobby, so I kind of have to prioritise things there a little bit. But then, having been away from it for a while, I was then a little bit nervous about coming back to it, which I get with playthroughs sometimes when they've been on break for a while, so I've sort of just tonight been back through the footage, back through me notes, gone and researched some extra stuff just to get myself back into the mind frame that I want to be in with this playthrough, because I don't really want to just shit out something half-assed. I wasn't really too happy with how the finale of the normal mode run came out, so I want this to be like the definitive FlameHisWorld Mega Man Xtreme playthrough, if I can do that, if I can pull that off. But essentially the way this is working story-wise is the main computer, after we intervened and MIDI died and all that shit in the first one, like, now it's just going haywire again. Something's up. There's probably more bullshit going on, but let's be frank here, we're here for the gameplay. And first up is Armoured Armadillo, spelt wrong because they didn't localise it to have a U in Armoured. One of my pet hates in games. This one I'll give it a bit of slack in that it's a Game Boy Color game, there's only so much space on the screen. Like, I am playing the US version, so I can't bitch about it in this particular release, but I know that in Mega Man X on the Super Nintendo, they did still call him Armored, spelled with like the US spelling in the PAL version, so you know, I doubt it was fixed in this version. That's all I'm saying. I doubt it was fixed in the PAL release of the Game Boy one. But that is very much a very minor nitpick. Like, I will say that in reference particularly to the Super Nintendo version, but also applicable here. If I'm bitching about that, I'm not bitching about something that matters, and that's a testament to how perfect Mega Man X is on the Super Nintendo. What a great game that is. This as well, I feel like I was quite negative when talking about the control scheme, because that is the thing that makes this a weaker version compared to the Super Nintendo game. But like, everything else is great, and playing it the way I'm playing it with the controls rebound in the emulator, it's a genuinely fun Game Boy Color platformer. It does still have some of the screen crunch issues that Game Boy and Game Boy Color adaptations of NES and Super Nintendo games have, but it's really not that bad, all things considered. The music for Armored Armadillo Sage, I'll say, hasn't held up that well compared to some of the other songs, but this was a much more complex song on the SNES. This is becoming one of them things I'm realising, and I'm catching myself constantly going to refer back to the Super Nintendo version, but when I'm talking about an adaptation, that's kind of inevitable. But this was a song that had quite a lot of layers in the original song, so when you take some of that out, it doesn't, like, it sounds like there's something a little bit lacking. That's not the case for all the songs, there's some that carried over quite well. But another thing that I've heard people talk about in reference to Armored Armadillo Stage is I've heard some people say that the music track here sounds like That Smell by Lynyrd Skynyrd, which is a song that I like quite a lot, but I don't hear it myself. Like, I suppose I can sort of hear like a bit of the pounding melody when it reaches its climax, but I don't know, like, I don't really hear it. But I've seen more than one person say it sounds like That Smell, so I don't know. Like, there are some much more obvious examples of Mega Man songs that sound like other songs, to be fair. Like, the obvious one that everyone brings up is, what is it? The one from Mega Man X3, Neon Tiger's stage. That sounds like My Michelle by Guns N' Roses, and it is the exact same guitar melody. So that is quite an obvious one. There's actually a few songs that sound like Elecman's stage from Mega Man 1. That's another one that gets brought up from time to time. There's probably a few others as well, but that is something that I find quite fascinating, just looking through, like, on TV tropes, the trope is suspiciously similar song. And you see quite a lot of songs that sometimes it seems like it's completely unintentional, because, you know, like, there's only so many melodies you can use. But other times it's really obvious that they wanted to license a certain song but couldn't for whatever reason, and it's like, let's just make the next best thing. Like, the one example that comes to my mind a lot is there was this one rip-off Guitar Hero game where they'd start, like, obviously copying the rhythm action gameplay, which you can say it's ripping off, but, you know, there's only so far you can go with that. But what was making it really obvious that it was just a bootleg kind of thing is that the songs were all these suspiciously similar songs, but with names that are alluding to the song they're ripping off. Like, there's a song that's obviously trying to imitate Iron Man by Black Sabbath, and they called the song Granite Man, which is absolutely beautiful. It's like they know exactly what they're doing. They're like sort of flirting with the idea of getting the song in, but either they couldn't license it or it was too expensive, and they're just a studio that don't really have that much in the way of resources, so they decided to do the next best thing. I would think at that point, if you were developing a game like that, it would probably work a lot better to come up with something semi-original, you know? Because if you come up with an original song and it's so-so, it's not the best, but it's still got a bit of like a guitar melody to it, then I think like people will sort of forgive it. But if it's just like, this is not Iron Man, it's, you know, it's obvious that it's not Iron Man when the actual Guitar Hero had Iron Man. But with that tangent aside, something I did skip over is the upgrade that I got in Armored Armadillo stage is the Zero Dash. There's different Zero upgrade parts that you can get, and they sort of all come together throughout the hard mode when you're playing it like this. If you're playing it on a raw save file and you didn't get all the parts in the standard mode run, then instead in that area you would find the head upgrade. So if you're just doing a new fresh save file run on hard mode, there are some of these later power-ups that you don't get, and also by extension it means that given you didn't revisit the earlier Maverick stages, then you don't get to have those powers either. So this is the more complete way to do a hard mode run as it stands. There is also an extreme mode, which I will say I'm not going to be showing that off, if only because it ends up functioning similar to what we've done in this playthrough. What extreme mode is extreme mode, it works similar to how the console Mega Man X games work, in that you can go to any of the Mavericks at once, and it's basically just a full run. Like, it doesn't have the split. It's not like you can go to these 4 Mavericks then you go to the other 4 Mavericks. It is just one big thing. So it's a more traditional Mega Man experience, but you know, given we've done a standard mode run and we're doing a hard mode run now, it would end up being the same thing. So I'm not gonna bother covering it in the playthrough. But here is Moth. I am basically having an easier time with him here than I would in the Super Nintendo version of X2 from what I recall, if only because he's like, the room is a lot smaller, so it's much easier to hit him. Although that does mean that it's also easier for him to hit you, so it's like a trade-off kind of deal. You don't, like, you gotta be that bit more careful, but it also makes it easier to get your hit in on him. You may notice with Moth that we didn't get an upgrading his stage. We'll be coming back for his upgrade later. So, like, it is the same upgrade area as it is in X2, so if you've played that game, you sort of know what we got to do to get to it. But up next is Magna Centipede stage, which I will say is, at least to me, it's one of the more memorable stages from X2. And that carries over here. Like, off the bat it looks like a pretty simple basic stage, but once we get into this particular area here, you've got quite a few more distinct level set pieces. You've got the falling blocks, you've got these searchlights that prompt the falling blocks to fall on you. I'm pretty sure they can crush and kill you if you get caught between 2 of them, so that's something that you will want to keep an eye out for. Don't get too close to them. Don't, like, them pink ones you can destroy, and usually when you see those it's a good idea just to destroy them so that they can't trap you. But the other thing that is a bit of a problem in this stage that you just saw is having to jump up to the heart tank and then the energy tank. It can be a little bit fiddly in terms of both execution and just knowing that there's stuff up there in the first place. So I suppose, like, to a degree, these games do train you to keep an eye out for little paths off to the side, and they're just more examples of that, but I could see it, like, people very easily just running straight past that. Particularly given it's the area where you have the falling blocks, and you're gonna have your eyes focused primarily on the falling blocks, because when you've got crusher sections, you kind of usually want to do that, because not keeping your eyes focused on the crushing blocks usually ends up being you getting crushed. Here we have another section using the head armor, which, as I was saying earlier, we got that in our first run through the standard mode. If we didn't get that, we would have had to have got that in Armored Armadillo stage. So, like, in this case, it's not really dictating the order that you play through, but I suppose it's one of the things to where theoretically it could. I haven't actually played Xtreme 2. I don't know if Xtreme 2 has a similar kind of setup as this, but it feels like the sort of thing that if you're going to have this setup where you could either come into the stages with all the items ready to go, or you could have to find them, it might theoretically prompt you to have to go in a different order, maybe go off of weakness order for a while. But as for what we're actually finding here, this is the Zero Scramble final. But if we were here on a raw hard mode file without any upgrades, this is where we'd get the leg upgrade. So if you're just playing it like that, that's something to bear in mind. If you want to get the leg upgrade, it's up here. You do have to dodge that fucking, like, what's it called, like the target shot, if you want to get up there. It's actually kind of a difficult jump to make. I seem to, like, not in terms of just making the jump itself, obviously it's just above you, but to make it without getting shot, without getting targeted. I remember that taking me a good few attempts when I was recording this, just to get that down without getting shot by something. This is the second time we've had this mini-boss, and I've got to say it's not a particularly interesting mini-boss, which is why I didn't bother addressing him the first time. I am using the Hadouken and the Shoryuken fairly liberally here, which is the advantage I have coming from a completed save file. But I have a feeling that might be why the Hadouken and Shoryuken got nerfed a bit in this game, because they knew that a lot of people would get it on their first run and they would carry it over, which does make sense. And honestly, I think it makes it a bit fairer, because they're still powerful weapons, they're still well worth getting, but it doesn't, like, completely break the game. It's not like the sort of thing that as long as you've got full health you can just one hit kill anything. Which, in the Super Nintendo games, I get what they were going for, and it was kind of okay there, because you would have to go well out your way to get them, and you wouldn't get it until quite close to the end game. But here, where you can get it before you fight the second batch of Mavericks, you know, it would be a bit OP if it was a guaranteed one-hit kill. Magnus Centipede here, it's a pretty simple pattern. I seem to recall him giving me a bit of grief as well in just dodging his stuff, because it's got that weird arc to it. But if you've got the weapon to take him down with there, then, you know, it's not really that big of a deal if you just got Wolfmoth's weapon to chip away at him. But with that out of the way, we can move on to the final Maverick that we're going to fight in this game, and I will say this Maverick fight is my least favourite overall. And we'll see why that is soon enough, but before that I want to bring up something that I actually consider to be an upgrade in this particular version of Full Gator Stage. And that is that irritating shaking effect they had in the Super Nintendo version, it's just gone. Like, you don't have to deal with the screen shaking so much, like, because what they were trying to do in X2 is they were trying to create, like, a visual effect to, like, represent the ship that we're on shaking up and down. Which I get the idea behind, but in practice it sort of ended up being a bit of a motion sickness nightmare. And I say that as someone who doesn't even suffer from motion sickness that much. I know the reason it's not included here is because the Game Boy Color most likely can't pull that off without having to sacrifice something else, but it might be a technical limitation, but it's for the best. It's a blessing in disguise, I should probably say. What we're getting here is we are getting the Zero Scramble Rising upgrade, and in a standard hard mode run with a raw file, that would be where the arm upgrade is. And I figure, seeing as I've been picking up these upgrades, I should probably start talking about what they actually do, because as far as I recall I don't actually get much if any use out of them, because I'm quite set in my ways for using these standard upgrades that I know and am experienced with. But the Zero Dash that we got in Armadillo stage, that damages all the enemies in a horizontal line. So it just fires out in front of you and it just wipes out everything that might be a problem. The Rising one that we just got, that's the same sort of thing but in a vertical line, so it's up and down rather than left and right. Then the Zero Scramble Final that we got from Magna Centipede stage, that one is one that just does huge damage but only to one enemy, so it's called Final and it does use up 20 energy points, which as far as I recall that's all your energy points, so it is just you get one big shot and that's it, it's the final one. And we do have one more Zero Scramble upgrade to get, but we'll be going back for that after this stage, so I think I'll hold off until then to go into what that does. Because first we have this boss fight here with Jamil, and he's gonna throw his shuriken around, but we have Flame Stag's weapon, so fuck him. I do tend to go back to just making fun of how easy the bosses are in these games, but I should clarify that these bosses are easy when you know what to do. And that's kind of the big difference in how we experience games now that we're online and there's a guide for everything, compared to playing these games as kids when you probably didn't have unfiltered internet access. Because I feel like that's something that we tend to overlook when we criticise games for being too easy and whatnot, and it's for even other things where it's like, say, collectathons and certain other things where it might seem a bit excessive in the game design. These games are designed for kids, and I feel like kids will get a lot more out of the trial and error thing, given that it's likely to be just the one game they get for their birthday or whatever, and they're probably not going to get another game for a long time. So looking at it through that context, the idea of trial and error, find out which boss is weak to which weapon, that encourages you to keep on replaying and find out the secrets for yourself. That is good design in that context. It just means that it doesn't translate that well when you're the kind of player who just wants to play a game, have fun with it, then move on to the next thing. I don't know whether I put that down to a game not aging well, or whether I put it down to just being, you get different ways of experiencing games and it's better for some people than others. But I did have my little moan about Will Gator's fight, and this is my problem with him, in that although he has a very obvious and easy to read pattern, and he's very easy to fight, he also has a lot of time where he's just under the water, and it takes him a long time to pop his head back up so you can get another hit in. So it's quite an easy and obvious fight to fight, but it takes ages anyway. It's not like there might be something I'm missing, I will say that much, but yeah, I'm not a fan of bosses like that do just outstay their welcome. Yeah, here's good old Dr. Kane, who is gonna basically prompt us to go on to the computer core stages, but like I mentioned, there is still one power-up left to go, and that's the power-up we couldn't get earlier when we were in Morph stage. Now we've got Will Gator's weapon, the Will Spin, we can find it. And I say find it in, I guess, loose quotations, given it's one of the more obscure ones. This is sort of going back on what I was saying about finding stuff out on your own as a kid through trial and error, because this, I don't think you can find this particular thing through trial and error. It's a little bit cryptic, it's a little bit hidden. You gotta watch what I'm gonna do here with the spin wheel. At this particular spot here, if you use the spin wheel, it breaks the floor. Nowhere else, just that spot there. So that's the sort of thing that, unless you're just mashing buttons aimlessly to see what happens, you're probably not going to find that yourself. But this is the Zero Scramble Earth Geyser, and if you were playing on a raw file, this would be where the body upgrade is. What the Earth Geyser does is it's a screen nuke. It just damages all enemies on the screen. So you can use that. It uses 10 points of your energy. So as far as I recall, that means you can get 2 of them off without having to recharge it. I imagine these weapons do have their purposes, but I'm not really getting use out of them. Like I say, I'm quite set in my ways with how I play. But with that particular power up, now we can head on to the computer core stages. So I'll see you next time for the finale of Mega Man Xtreme. Bye bye for now.